Do you not see, I'm sure both of you see, the parallels of what's happening now and what happened then? I mean, we're talking about a time when New York State was battling with Washington, the famous headline of, Ford to City drop dead. You're seeing now Washington rejecting FMAP money that the state needs desperately to keep its budget alive. It's not, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, but there are all of these lessons learned, and Richard Ravitch, that you just mentioned him, is sort of out there telling everyone that the state is really in dire fiscal straits, and yet no one's really listening. And so I wonder, Rob, if you can say what you see in this book that's happening that Hugh Carey managed to get done that we can't get done today at the state level.
Well, President Ford said until the state and the city engage in a great deal of sacrifice and self-help, he would not even consider federal assistance. Ford actually wanted to see the city first go into a default before he would even consider an assistance, but luckily it didn't go all that way. Carey persuaded him not to allow the city to go into default in bankruptcy, which he felt would have been extremely disruptive at the very least. The stimulus money is drying up. It may or may not be renewed. That's a parallel. The need for political leadership at the state and city levels that will result in the citizenry really accepting that this is an entrenched and intractable fiscal crisis at the state level now, no longer an imminent bankruptcy, of course, as it was in 1975 of the city, meaning that
now something else that's very important, Rob.
Go ahead.
Yeah, something else that's very important. As you know, I serve 5 terms. Yeah.
Finish. I'm sorry, Rob. Finish it up. Hold on.
I was just going to say that what I mean by intractable is that the state is now making a huge force to make trade-offs, and this is going to continue for the foreseeable future between roads and schools and between health care and law enforcement expenditures. This isn't going to end any time without serious structural changes, and you could argue perhaps also federal assistance might become necessary, and not just in New York but across the country. And that's something the public has to wake up to, and for whatever reason they're not buying it now when Governor Patterson is talking about it or others.
I'm sorry, Senator, go ahead.
Okay. As you know, I'm both a politician and a professor and academic. And I served 5 terms in the New York State Senate. And I'm going to be very candid. Rob and I wrote another book 4 years ago called 3 Men in a Room.
I remember it.
The Politics of Corruption, right, in state government. It is much, much worse today than it was 4 years ago.
Well, why is that?
Much worse. And, well, interesting. I had an interview with Warren Anderson just before he passed away, and he said the civility and the stature of the people in the legislature had declined. And he said when Governor Carey came before the Republican conference in the Senate and in the Assembly, of course, the Democrats with Fred Orenstein and Stanley Steingart and then Stanley Fink, they worked together as a team. They respected the executive office of government. And the executive office of government, though they had differences with the state legislature, respected them. And because of that, they compromised and they worked together to save the state. And that was one of the great achievements of Governor Hugh Carey, that he took disparate and different groups, not only in society, as Rob correctly has said, but in state government. And that is what is lacking today.
Do you not think, this book also is a very positive view of Governor Carey's legacy, and there are some things later on in his tenure, he didn't run for re-election for a 3rd term, he lost a lot of support in the polls, he had some personal issues, his marriage was annulled, he was seen a little bit as a joke in the press. I mean, is that part of the problem, is that towards the end of his tenure, that's what people remember, instead of those days when he did this really unusually powerful thing and was such a strong leader? And to that end, perhaps now, and Rob, if you want to go here, we don't have that kind of leadership in Albany.
Well, I do think that the press starting around 1977, became more interested in the personal lives of the politicians and were much more willing to write about them and sort of use them as fodder. People magazine came of age, and the public appetite for this kind of story really grew. And at the same time, I think there was a genuine amount of fiscal crisis fatigue in the press. They were probably looking for a more colorful story, and Carey took his lumps in the press as a result. He also put his foot in his mouth at times, and he, as you mentioned, he had personal issues, as we all do, and those started to dominate the story. But what I found is that he had tremendous achievements as he was in digging the city and the state out of the economic doldrums of those years. There's a lot of extraordinary achievements that he could point to, and I do mention some of them in the book, even though the frame of the book is really looking at 1975, 1976, when this crisis that had really international dimensions hit.
It's also actually, and there are
I would even go a step further, and I think it's an important step, and I think Rob would agree with me. The greatness of Governor Carey, and we consider him one of the great governors in the 20th and 21st century, is when there was a major problem, he rose to the occasion of tackling it and resolving it as best as he could. And that's very, very unusual. Now, there were, issues, minor issues that, Rob had mentioned during the second administration that he had, and without major problems that he had during the first administration. And however, when you add up all of the issues and all of the achievements, one has to admit this was an extraordinarily gifted governor. Of course he had warts. All of us have warts. But he comes up smelling like roses.
And that's actually very apt, because that was what his favorite line was.
That's right, in his inaugural address. Days of wine and roses are over. But I really think that he rose to the occasion that needed a great governor to resolve.
He also, and I actually am going to have to give you the last word there, Senator, but this book is available now, is it not? And I'm sure you're probably going to be doing some publicity around the state.
Yes, we are, as a matter of fact. Both of us have appeared on various programs, and it could be purchased in bookstores as well as Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. And both Rob and I will be going around the state in the next couple of months, and you'll probably be seeing articles in other newspapers, upstate and downstate, and other interviews. But we really are enjoying this interview with you, Liz.
Well,
thank you.